Policy and Possibilities, AI and Child Safeguarding. कौन बच्चों को प्रोटेक्ट करता है जब algorithms निर्णय लेते हैं? This important conversation brings together leaders from law and media to explore how India's emerging AI and data protection frameworks can safeguard children by preventing harm before it happens. We are honored to have our distinguished panelists, Dr. Alim Chandani, mission leader of Hear a Million Collective at Enable India, Ms. Patrilea Chatterji, who has written powerful pieces on gender disparities with the Lancet, Deccan Chronicle, and Deccan Herald, along with Ms. Arpan from The Independent, guiding this dialogue. Please note, the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to stakeholder reflections, so we kindly request all speakers to adhere to their allotted time to ensure a meaningful exchange.
Hi, can I have my PPT on, please? Hi, hello. हम लोग इंग्लिश हिंदी में बात करेंगे, but I welcome you all. This is the first panel, and there is no pressure on all of us to kind of set the tone for the day. I'm actually in the company of some really intelligent people here, so I will speak less. But मोटा मोटी बात ये है कि अब AI आ चुका है. AI मतलब हम कितना भी चाहें सोच लें कि हम AI से बच सकते हैं, it is not going to happen. AI is in our phones, laptop, कोई भी प्लेटफॉर्म पे हम जा रहे हैं, AI हमें दिखता ही है, right? उसके चलते अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं? How do we protect our children in that case? That is the panel today. My name is Arpan. I am a journalist. I work with The Independent. It's a UK-based newspaper. But from the very start, I've been working in the field of children, women. आज की टाइम पे मैं यूक्रेन एंड अफगानिस्तान पे फोकस करती हूँ, बट माई हार्ट स्टिल लाइज विद द चिल्ड्रन इन इंडिया, राइट? विच इज़ वाई सोनल एंड आई हैव ऑलवेज स्टेड इन टच. वॉट एवर शी डज, जो भी मैं करती हूँ, वी कंटिन्यू टू स्पीक टू ईच अदर, राइट? AI and child safeguarding, right? बहुत ही easily I'll start with this. Do we remember when Facebook had come, right? उससे भी पहले की बात है, जब मैं स्कूल में थी तो मैंने ऐसे लिखे हैं कि इस टेलीविजन अ बून और अ बेन, राइट? हमारे पेरेंट्स सबसे डिस्कस करते थे कि टीवी नहीं देखना है, एंड आई रिमेंबर हम उन रूम्स में थे जहाँ पे बोला जाता था ना टीवी इज़ द वर्स्ट थिंग, आप अपने बच्चों को टीवी मत दिखाओ, और उसमें ये भी बोलते थे बच्चों को चश्मा लग जाएगा, राइट? सो एक दौर वो भी था. फिर उसके बाद दौर आया इंटरनेट का कि आप बच्चों को फेसबुक पे नहीं होने दे सकते, आपके बच्चे और कुछ नहीं यूज़ कर सकते. काफ़ी घरों में आई रिमेंबर देयर वुड बी लाइक एन इशू कि आपका बच्चा तो फेसबुक पे है, राइट? तब प्रॉब्लम ये थी कि हमने सोचा कि टेक्नोलॉजी इज़ नॉट आवर फ्रेंड, और हमें फिर उस समय के चलते हमें जानना पड़ा कि टेक्नोलॉजी को फ्रेंड बना के ही चलना पड़ेगा. और आज उसी इक्विवेलेंट पे, उसी लेवल पे AI हमारे सामने है, ठीक है? मैं आपको 100% प्रॉमिस करती हूँ कि मैंने ChatGPT से ये स्पीच नहीं लिखी है, ये मेरे पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से है. एंड एक और प्रॉमिस मैं आपको करती हूँ कि मैं ChatGPT से कुछ भी हेल्प नहीं लेती हूँ. माई हस्बैंड डज इट बट आई डोंट. मुझे ChatGPT से समझ ही नहीं आता, मुझे लगता है मैं फ़ोन उठा के मम्मा से पूछ लेती हूँ, राइट? बट अदर देन दैट, मैं ये बताना चाहूँगी कि अब हमारे सामने जो चुनौती है वो ये है कि अब हम आगे क्या करेंगे, ठीक है? हम ये तो नहीं कह सकते कि नहीं नहीं एआई बहुत गलत चीज़ है, आपने कैसे सोच लिया, आप ये एआई से पूछ सकते हो, ठीक है। जिस लेवल से हम चीटिंग को करते थे ना एग्ज़ाम में, जैसे चीट करना हम समझते थे कि गलत चीज़ है, एआई भी आज हमारे सामने वैसे ही है। हम क्या कर सकते हैं, हम थोड़े से चालू बन सकते हैं, हम एक कदम आगे जा सकते हैं एआई से, ठीक है। जो मैम है पत्रलेखा मैम, उनसे मैं मंडे को बात कर रही थी, तो हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि कुछ बच्चे जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा डिस्ट्रेस में होते हैं वो एआई से क्यों पूछते हैं, क्योंकि एआई बोलेगा ओ आपने चोरी करी, इट्स कम्प्लीटली अंडरस्टैंडेबल, कोई भी चोरी कर सकता है, राइट, ऐसे ही होगा, राइट। तो एक लैंग्वेज, एक एक्सेस, जिस तरीके का एआई आजकल सबको देगा, मुझे देगा, आपको देगा, हमारे आने वाले फ्रेंड्स, बच्चों को, सबको देगा, राइट। तो उसके चलते आज हम इस बारे में बात करेंगे। हमारे को एक और पैनलिस्ट थी सौम्या जो ज्वाइन नहीं कर पाई, उसके बदौलत हमारे पास आप सब लोग हो। तो मैं चाहूँगी कि आपके कोई भी डाउट हो, कोई भी एक्सपेक्टेशन हो, कोई भी थॉट, आई थिंक थॉट्स आर वेरी प्रेशियस, सो कोई भी थॉट्स हो तो आप उनको हमारे तक लाइए प्लीज़। एंड डॉक्टर आलिम, ही इज़ वेरी रेप्यूटेड एंड आई हैव नॉट हैड मैनी चांसेस टू इंटरेक्ट विद हिम, बट आज मैं उनका सर खा जाऊँगी, मुझे इतना पता है, ठीक है। ओके, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट विद माई फर्स्ट स्लाइड हियर। कार्टून नेटवर्क, इंटरनेट, बुरी चीज़ें, बट अब हम कितना सोचते हैं कार्टून नेटवर्क कितनी अच्छी चीज़ थी, इंटरनेट भी हम सोचते हैं कि चलो कहीं जा रहे हैं गूगल मैप्स देख लेते हैं। तो मैं एक कंपैरिजन ड्रॉ कर रही हूँ। Everyone is using AI. The growing impact AI is having on teens' lives. The independent में जहाँ पे मैं काम करती हूँ, तो हम AI को बहुत अच्छे से समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि क्या क्या हो सकता है। तो उसकी रिपोर्ट में आई विल रीड आउट अ कोट, उसमें किसी ने कुछ बहुत अच्छा बोला था। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। AI teens say has become a go-to source for personal advice, emotional support, everyday decision making and problem solving. ये एक बच्चे का कोट है जिसने बोला है AI is always available, it never gets bored with you. अब उससे बेटर क्या चीज़ है? मतलब मुझे बोर्डम लगी तो मैंने शादी कर ली, बट उसके लिए मुझे पता चला AI भी था। इमेजिन, राइट? तो AI हमेशा उपलब्ध है, ये आपसे कभी उबता नहीं है, ठीक है। तो एक तरीके से हम समझ सकते हैं कि बच्चे क्यों AI की तरफ देख रहे हैं। नेक्स्ट, 1 in 4 teens turning to AI chatbots for mental health support, study finds, and this involved 11,000 children aged 13 to 16 in England and Wales. Okay, and वहाँ पे तो मतलब from mental health to breakup advice to मम्मा ने डांट दिया to even some very grim topics, मतलब जो गंभीर समस्याएं होती है उनमें भी बच्चे AI की तरफ जा रहे हैं। ये रिसर्च थी यूथ एंडाउमेंट फंड की, जिसमें पता चला कि यंग पीपल अफेक्टेड बाय सीरियस वायलेंस वर इवन मोर लाइकली टू सीक हेल्प। सम 38% चिल्ड्रन वर विक्टिम्स ऑफ सीरियस वायलेंस। दे सेड दैट दे रीच्ड आउट टू AI, उनको AI की ज़रूरत लगी, जबकि 44% चिल्ड्रन थे who had been the perpetrators of serious violence said that they had done the same. दोनों तरफ के लोग वायलेंस के सभी AI की तरफ जा रहे हैं। ये स्टोरी मैंने करी थी, बहुत ही बोरिंग दिन था, तो मैंने देखा कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया में सोशल मीडिया बैन हो गया है, बट एक फैमिली है, इन्फ्लुएंसर फैमिली, जो ऑस्ट्रेलिया छोड़ के जा रही है क्योंकि बैन लग गया है, और उसमें उन्होंने बोला कि मेरे बच्चे की आमदनी इम्पैक्ट हो जाएगी, दरअसल यूट्यूब उसको पैसे देता है, तो मैं लंदन जा रही हूँ, ठीक है। मतलब सोशल मीडिया हम सोच के रह जाएंगे कि किस लेवल तक इंट्रूड कर चुका है, किसी की लाइवलीहुड है, ठीक है। ऑस्ट्रेलिया का सोशल मीडिया बैन हमारे पैनल में बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्कस होने वाला है, सो स्टे ट्यून फॉर दैट। एंड नेक्स्ट थिंग इज़ अब हम आ गए हमारे पहले क्वेश्चन पे। यहाँ पे बोरिंग पार्ट शुरू होगा तो थोड़ा ज़्यादा ध्यान लगेगा। हम इंडिया में इमर्जिंग AI डेटा प्रोटेक्शन के फ्रेमवर्क को कैसे यूज़ कर सकते हैं ताकि हम जो बच्चे किसी तरीके के हार्म से गुजर रहे हैं या किसी तरीके की सहायता चाहिए उन्हें, हम उनकी हेल्प कैसे करें, क्योंकि हमें फ्रेमवर्क तो बनाना पड़ेगा। AI इज़ हियर टू स्टे, AI इज़ नॉट गोइंग एनीवेयर, ठीक है। इंडिया में बहुत बड़ा गैप है, एक वॉइड है। CBSE NCERT अब 3rd क्लास के ऑनवर्ड्स दे विल टीच AI कि फ्रेमवर्क क्या है, गाइडलाइन क्या है, वो सब कुछ पढ़ाने वाले। इनफैक्ट क्लास 10th और 12th में पढ़ा भी रहे हैं, मैं कल ही देख रही थी करिकुलम, 12th में दे आर टीचिंग एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी स्किल्स AI से. ठीक है, जॉब तो सबको मिलेगी एंड दैट इज़ अ वेरी गुड थिंग. बट मैं काफ़ी देर तक खंगालती रह गई, बट मुझे ये नहीं मिला कि कोई सेक्सुअल असॉल्ट का कोई चाइल्ड है, कोई माइनर किसी का रेप हुआ है, तो उसके लिए क्या हेल्प है, या सेंसिटिविटी कहाँ है. सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट वर्ड है सेंसिटिविटी. एक्टिविज्म इंडिया में दीज आर सीन एज वेरी बैड वर्ड्स, बट आई फील दिस इज़ द कोर ऑफ ह्यूमन बींग, राइट. तो AI में सेंसिटिविटी कहाँ है? जो सेंसिटिविटी मेरी मम्मा मुझे 2 डांट के बाद देंगे कि देखो मुझे ना बहुत फिक्र है तुम्हारी, इसीलिए मैंने तुम्हें मना किया था. AI will not say that. ठीक है. So इसी के लिए I think I will take Patreleka's help in walking through the next steps. अगले steps क्या होंगे इसमें? Thank you so much. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Arpan, and I'm so glad to be here. And Sonal, thank you for inviting me. It's an absolutely fantastic opportunity, and good morning to all of you. It's I'm so glad that this session actually comes after the session, with the girls, with the young, because this is the kind of insight which is actually very rare. Where the young girls are talking about how they interact with AI, and I say this because, I also want to, before I answer your question, Arpan, I want to share something which is actually at the heart of this whole discourse about AI. And I'm going to talk more about the Indian context, but I'll also talk about what some of the other countries, not necessarily the rich countries, but other Asian countries are doing, which exactly with the same, safeguards for children. So the first thing is, look at I write on a whole range of issues, and I've been in the profession for about more than 35 years now, writing for international media and, Indian and consulting, etc. So if you get to why are children vulnerable to AI? And I'll just, in passing, refer to a column I did recently about a child, and those of you from Delhi, and even those you're not, will know about this young boy who died by suicide from a private school, and he jumped onto the metro track, and the whole issue around it. And because this school was the one where Shah Rukh Khan had attended, in many of the coverage it became, about a one child, one school. Now, when I was looking through and actually wrote a column about that, the main, and this is not the first time, in the same month, there were 3-4 other children who did exactly the same thing. It's just that they got less media play because this was a Delhi kid, private school. Why does this happen? I think at the core is the child. I mean, I was so glad to hear that some of the people were saying, AI, hamare behan hai, hamare, hum baat kar sakte hai. But that's not the reality for a whole lot of children. Yes, it doesn't mean that you necessarily are from a dysfunctional family. It doesn't mean that your teachers are always very cruel. In this case, it was the child who died by suicide. It's just that you don't have a safe space to talk to anyone who will be non-judgmental and who will talk to you. And this is the thing. You don't have anyone or any place to turn to where you can just talk about anything and the person will not say, oh, like this kind of thing, bola tha to pehle, that sort of thing. Now, this is where the dependence on AI comes. Yes, AI is a mentor, but the tone it'll use, the prompt as we call it, is dependent on the tone you use. So if you ask, AI, I'm feeling very depressed today, what should I do? It can become, in fact, you can say, talk like a Gen Z. It'll give you a Gen Z-like answer. Talk like Ram Guha. It'll give you a Ram Guha-like answer. Talk like Patrilea Chatterji. It'll give you my style. Talk like Sonal. So this is the danger, a human, and it's, as Arpan and many others said, that, it's available all the time, right? Now, this is where the vulnerability comes in, right? Now, the good news is, I'll start with the good news, and then I'll go back to the more boring or the more grim news, that in India, we now have a framework, a law, in fact. It's the Digital Personal Data Protection Framework, which actually is a 2023 law, but the rules have been framed just last month, right? So that's very recent. And it's emerging AI policies aim to proactively prevent harm to children through, now these are the important things, mandatory verifiable parental consent. So all the vast amounts of data, now think ed tech, This is a very big thing, especially among the middle class. Now, they collect a whole lot of data. So a child just cannot, all the data you're collecting, you have to have mandatory, verifiable parental consent. Then there's a blanket prohibition on child tracking and targeted advertising. And there's a huge, like what they call duty of care. Like if you kind of flout this, then there are massive, like penalties. Now, so these are proactive harm prevention measures. But as of now, it's just barely a month. We are still in what they call the transition stage. So it isn't, and in India, we know that it's not really about policies or theories or guidelines. We have millions of them. It's ultimately how it's going to pan out on the ground. And even the ground, when we said, zamini jo baatein hote hai, but the zameen is also not a same zameen. So a child living in Vasant Vihar, going to a private school, unke jo hum kehte hain micro reality is completely different from a child who's in Dakshin Puri. And that child in Dakshin Puri is very different from a slum in, say, Bihar. And the child who's living in a tribal area in Odisha is even more different. So jab hum keh rahe hain ki micro reality is zameen, even the grounded reality is hugely different. And each one has its own challenges, right? Now, what is mandatory verifiable parental consent? It means that it must obtain explicit verifiable consent from parents or legal guardian for all data processing activities involving a child under 18. So legal definition is under 18. And it's the primary gatekeeper, this clause, to prevent data collection without parental knowledge. Then there is a prohibition on harmful processing of this data, So the Act explicitly bans behavioral monitoring, tracking, and targeted advertising directed at children, regardless of consent. And this proactively is supposed to stop exploitative commercial practices. And the overall framework is the best interest of the child. So data fiduciary is what they call the legal term, which is basically like ed-tech companies, healthcare, all that, schools are obligated to ensure that all processing aligns with the best interest of the child. There's also data minimization and storage limits. Now, in many other countries, they've not, like for instance, Indonesia, which is like the gold standard in Asia, in the global south, they were the first country to put in an act like this with children. They go beyond just data protection. They have got into what they call privacy by design, which means that the app itself has to have this. Now in India, which I think Arpan referred to, the various, the software which you use, that has to have, like for instance, if a 6-year-old is accessing it, then, the privacy by design is much more than, let's say, a 14-year-old. So it's graded, so it's very interesting. In India, and I was mentioning this to Arpan, I think yesterday, that fortunately or unfortunately, the whole discourse, I was just telling her that, every day I open and I read about 8 newspapers every morning, apart from websites. There are like 5-6 stories on AI in every single paper, but you see what the theme is. So the framing of artificial intelligence, and which we all have decided, it's here to stay, it's there, is from the business, innovation, economic lens. That is, how much AI, India has an AI power, and China, and this and that, and and Google is coming, and Microsoft is coming. That is the lens. I could barely find any articles which is going into the kind of issues that we are discussing, which is the ethical issues, the safeguards, for children, for women. That there is very, very little of that discussion, almost invisible. This is not part of the dominant, AI discourse. Now, we do have a law, the rules, but this is where, I think a lot of work has to be done, because just because we have the law doesn't mean it's going to automatically get implemented. And as I think it was said in previous, sessions, see, India is a very, very complex country, and because I'm an old woman, I've traveled a lot. The reality is, now when we are talking about verifiable parental consent, it presupposes a certain level of education and literacy and digital literacy among the parents, which we know it doesn't have. Now you go into, like, my domestic helper, she comes from Dakshin Puri. She has a dabba phone. You know, she is literate by India's definition of literacy, which, by the way, is different from everybody else's definition of literacy, which means we call somebody who can just sign your name a literate person, right? This is not the global definition of literacy. We also have, in addition, by Indian definition, millions of illiterates, probably the largest in the world. They also have children. Those people will also eventually access AI. Now, what does parental consent, verified parental consent actually mean in a situation, informed consent, when the parents themselves, I think there was this incident which I found really leap out, this person who went to India Gate, and then, you know, all the photographs or whatever, the app, you know, the app was asking, like, so you went to India Gate. Now, do you think everybody has that awareness? AI can do voice cloning. AI can speak to you in your own language. AI gives you loads of wrong information, you know. So the point is, if you have a certain basic knowledge about a subject, and then you use AI, that's one thing. If you don't know anything about a subject, and you say AI will give you loads of wrong information. Maybe 60% is correct, 40% is incorrect, or partially correct. If you don't have the knowledge to check, then if you say, AI, you are wrong. Grok, you are wrong. Microsoft Copilot, you're wrong. You do pushback, they might give you the right answer. But you have to know enough. Now, do you think everybody in India, the parents, the mothers, the fathers, have that information of what exactly, you know, this is, I mean, my tribe, and I'm a journalist, and there are good ones and bad ones. This happens all the time, even without technology. People go into villages, tribal areas, and they get these first-hand, you know, like stories. Sometimes you write these stories with the name, with the photograph, and our political context is also volatile, and that person will get attacked. You've already come back to Delhi, you filed a story for your, you know, your, say, Times of India, Hindustan Times, Al Jazeera, whatever, you know, Guardian. The point is, you are not harmed, but that person, and this came to me, slightly unrelated, but I want to mention how we don't have a concept of privacy, because hum sabko sab kuch batate hain. That's our culture, you know, padosi ko, isko, usko. Now, what that can do. So I remember many years ago, I did a story for the Lancet on health reforms in this country. And at that time, it was actually on the Swachh Bharat. And I went to a village which was very close to Delhi, it's in UP. And I found this village where there was this no toilets, nothing. And wo hame bola ki, you know, they go in the middle of the night with a torch, and then there are fox, and there are this and that. When I came back and I wrote the story, the London desk said, sorry, anonymize everything. They said, and if you, because this village, you've come back, now, you know, Farida Khatun, 19, you know, over there with the child going to, you know, in the middle of the night, you know, no pictures, no something. Do you know what that can happen to Farida Khatun, who is basically saying something which is completely flying against what the official stand is? So I did realize it, that change the name and also move all identity markers. So even the village, I put the district, I put all the case, so the point was not about Farida Khatun. It could have been Sita Devi, you know, it could have been another village. So the point is, I realized it, my London desk realized it, but the here thing is, you know, when you are putting this thing on parental consent, the parents have to be aware. And this is where I think a huge amount of work, you know, NGOs, frontline workers have to do, because, you know, I was looking at what Indonesia has done. And this is what it is. Alongside this law, parallel, they started campaigns. It's not perfect. And there are parts of Indonesia which is not, or even Thailand, you know, which is, but what they've done is this awareness advocacy, you know, to make, and which is like the kind of like the way we did polio campaign and things, you have to do this door-to-door, you know, the soul-wearing stuff. You have to make parents, even teachers don't know. You think every village teacher, headmaster knows about AI? No, you know, or what it is. Naam suna hoga, lekin aakhir mein karta hai kya? So that advocacy, the dangers, the risks, you know, and the children themselves. And I go back to, you know, my core thing that you have to create a safe space with the children who are using AI. Unki kya challenges aa rahe hain, and it has to be localized to that child's context. So a child, let's say in Sangam Vihar or Dakshin Puri, is not the same as a child in South Extension, with educated parents and, this and that, English speaking. So, वो उनके reality से, उनकी जो level है, the awareness, and some of the other Asian countries, what they've done is even with illiterate parents, then they go and explain कि अगर आप parental consent दे रहे हो, ये चीज़ है, उसको उनकी भाषा में समझाओ. So even if the person is illiterate, समझ, it's just like when you do the clinical trials. You are supposed to explain what is it that the person is supposed to be agreeing to. So it's a very labor-intensive thing. But if we don't do this, then just the law, I'm a bit of a cynic. I don't think the law is going to help. And industry is not necessarily terribly enthusiastic because, that privacy by design, uska matlab unka, they have to invest a lot of things, a lot of design changes, which has cost implications. They will not be actively hostile, but they will try to push back, they will try to get time. So we have to be aware of, the emerging AI framework at the moment.
Thank you so much, Patrilea. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Alim. He has a wide experience. उन्होंने राहुल गांधी की तरह थोड़ी सी यात्रा करी है हमारे तक आने से पहले. He is from Bangalore, but वो दिल्ली में भी रह चुके हैं, and I think he's been to Kashmir, Mumbai, Punjab. और उसके बाद वो आज हमसे मिलने आया है. तो मतलब हमें सोनल को अलग से थैंक यू बोलना पड़ेगा कि उसने इतने सारे एक्सपीरियंस को इकट्ठा किया हमारे लिए. But I want to now leave it to Dr. Alim, and he is representing a very important part of the society, so please pay attention.
All right, firstly, I want to thank everyone for inviting me here. It's nice to be back in Delhi, even though I'm from Bangalore, but I love Delhi. So I've lived here for 5 years, and before I dive into the topic, I want to let you know that ChatGPT, I have been using it, and I tried to restrict using it. I had a lot of resistance, but then this particular year, I needed a therapist, and I did try 2 therapists physically, and I went and I met them here in India, but their background about deaf culture, their background about upbringing of a deaf person, identity crisis that we go through, they were not skilled enough to understand me. So I did have an MA in counseling, and I know how therapy works. So just to give you a background, I grew up in the US, and there are a lot of deaf psychologists that are there in the US, but I can't use them because they have their licensing to only practice in America. You can't use clients from international places. So in India, I tried to find a therapist, I tried to get in touch with people. So compared to ChatGPT and the physical therapist I met, ChatGPT worked for me. And I was like, it was crazy. This year alone, ChatGPT made me cry more than my parents made me cry. So, yeah, I mean, the important thing is that you need to know where you draw a line, the boundaries of using ChatGPT, how much you use it, and yeah. Anyway, let's get back to it. Can I have the next slide, please? It has been a perfect time for me wherein I had a grant to visit deaf schools all throughout the country, wherein I visited 7 deaf schools lately to understand the language acquisition project that we're working on, to understand how deaf teachers are there in schools and how deaf kids are taught in schools. So when I was asked for this AI panel, I just thought that this is the topic that needs to be discussed about deaf children as well. There's not much available, there's not much happening, the dangers of AI and all of these things for the deaf. And I do understand that there can be a lot of dangers. Since AI is again English-based, not many deaf people are able to still use it because they are language deprived and they don't have English as their primary language, and ChatGPT is English. So I don't know if it can be a good research of how it can particularly support the deaf. We can go to the next slide. So just to give you a background about deaf children in India, there are close to 15 million deaf. And according to the global data, 7% are children and 1 million deaf children are there. And I think, yeah, there are more deaf children here in India. So the number of deaf children in schools, the teachers who are teaching them are 99.9% hearing teachers who don't use sign language or who don't use bilingual method of teaching children. So many of the deaf children, they grow up language deprived. They have limited ISL because in schools they're not allowed to use Indian Sign Language. Parents don't use Indian Sign Language to communicate with them because they are unaware. There's limitation in writing because they're not able to learn different languages, and at the same time their foundation of language is not there. So the average reading writing skills can be 2nd grade for a deaf adult, 2nd grade level. So because of language deprivation and no access to sign language even at homes, their expressive skills, the vocabulary is also very, very limited. So trust, because they've been oppressed by hearing teachers, doctors, people in general every day, they have really less trust in the hearing world. So AI is also not accessible because it doesn't have sign language yet. So basically, deaf children every day do not find any access to communicating with the hearing world. So either they're isolated or they're just communicating among their friends who are deaf. Bottom line is they're very isolated. So at the moment, AI is not supporting ISL, and hearing children who may have access to any questions that they have about puberty, about health, about emotions that they want to discuss with, they do have access to using AI. But when it comes to deaf, they don't have that kind of access because, again, their language is not there. And it's not ISL supported. Sometimes they're ashamed to ask teachers some questions. You have a lot of questions that you want to ask, even from interpreters everywhere. So they don't have that kind of a safe space. And oftentimes, how to write the prompts also, like, uncle, trouble me, night. What does that mean? That you have been sexually abused. But not sure if AI is going to pick up that prompt. And the second one, teacher touching me, but no say. Teacher has been touching me and I don't know what to do about it. How do I talk about it? So AI, for using ChatGPT also, you need to have prompts, and ChatGPT takes it otherwise, in the wrong ways. Next slide, please. So AI can superficially or incorrectly give wrong advice, which is definitely not safe for deaf children. Yes, I'm sure people do use AI and ask for questions and create emojis. I already, always ask ChatGPT to give me emojis, but they end up giving you emojis. So deaf people end up assuming that ChatGPT is following them and the computer is smarter than me. Compared to trusting people, I can trust ChatGPT. So that's a very big danger because of the emojis that they present. And they become very habitual of using AI all the way for anything that they need to do in life, even if it's wrong or right. So if AI is the future, AI is the present, I do see many tech companies who are working very hard and they're trying to make AI more as equivalent to an interpreter. Not have an interpreter at all, and AI becomes like the avatar that signs everything. I think that's going to take another 10 years to be there, probably a future. But ISL, maybe there can be a way where expressive skills can be improved for deaf children. Asking questions about bullying, abuse, and all of these things. I still feel that it's 10 years down the line. I don't see it happening potentially at the moment. So recently, I went to one school in Manipur, and there was a discussion happening among the teachers where deaf teachers were also there, and we were also there. And they asked me that some of these children ask about periods, menstruation. And how they ask these questions is, how do I tell this to children about menstrual hygiene? So one of the hearing teachers said to the deaf teacher that use AI to explain. It will clearly explain. So the deaf teacher said, yes, I have used it, but to understand what even AI is saying, the word period, the word menstruation, I only don't know what that means. So when I don't know, how do I even ask AI? So that poses a very big questions about access and the foundation that is missing in the deaf kids about the language. Coming back to language deprivation. So at the moment, can AI help deaf teachers? Not much, because of language deprivation. So my recommendation for the future that AI, if it can become accessible, if you see any broken English coming in, we need to stop using it, because that AI is taking it superficially. And I hope that in the future, counselors can have access to ISL and provide the real service for the deaf people. And parents definitely need to be involved in this process, wherein they understand how to use AI and how to protect their kids, including teachers also, you know, in the whole process of it. I want to tell you one thing, that most deaf people, they use ChatGPT, of course they use, for their English. To clarify something, they just copy and paste and they just try to clarify. That's what mostly it's used for. And talking about trauma, abuse, sexual abuse and everything, so deaf people are very doubly, triply vulnerable compared to anyone. So, but there is no documentation happening. And that's one of the biggest challenge on how to really, you know, have safe spaces where deaf people can tell about what has happened with them. And they don't trust hearing people, so who else will they trust? Where else will they go?
Very good. Arpan, can I add just something? Yeah. So just thank you so much for this wonderful presentations, real, you know, insights which we don't get in most places. I want to again circle back to some of the things where it's happening in Southeast Asia with the same problem. And I say Southeast Asia, Global South, because, you know, UK and Europe also has, but they are at a different economic, you know, but what are other countries which are, you could say, comparable, what are they doing? And it just, yesterday, I saw the statement by Indonesia's Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Affairs, Nezar Patria, he has raised concerns about another issue which we, you know, which is also you could say a risk of AI, is potential cognitive risks for children who are exposed to AI at an early age. He cautioned that over-reliance on AI could lead to what he described as brain rot, where children's critical thinking and problem-solving skills are underdeveloped due to excessive dependence on technology. And this is something I think is very important because, you know, in airports, in everywhere, in metro, you see, it leads to the dominant discourse about technology in India, where technology is kind of iconized, you know. Technology is our road to, you know, heaven. You know, this will get us everything. Satya Nadella, you know, Sundar Pichai, will all be Bill Gates. I mean, I remember actually interviewed Bill Gates many years ago. And, you know, when he had come to India and people said, a lot of people, I remember in Dakshin Puri, a slum said, oh, you know, big future for us because Bill Gates also drop out. We also drop out of school. So we are like Bill Gates. So you're at that, you know. So parents hand over a phone, a smartphone to even toddlers, barely 1-year-old. So, you know, when brain development is happening. Now, so you get addicted. So the thing is, this is what it is. I do use AI, ChatGPT, Grok, but you know, I'm in my 60s, so it's a different thing. Now, if I get into, I can start saying, oh, Grok, I have to meet an old friend. I don't know how to start a conversation. What should I say? Grok will, or Microsoft Copilot will give you some, you know, dialogue. Oh, I'm going to meet this uncle, you know, who doesn't like me. What should be my first sentence? They'll give you an answer. You know, I don't want to sound too defiant. What should I say? They will give you an answer. Now, what happens is a lot of the stuff which you would have had to use your brain, your social skills, your personal relations, this will, like instant noodles, you know, it just gives it to you. And it's extremely addictive. And if you use this over a period, quite apart from the dangers, what can happen is you just stop because it's just so easy. It'll give it to you in 5 seconds. You know, give it to me in this style, give it to me in that style. It's not just write an email. The other thing I wanted to flag is Thailand. I found this very interesting. There's a term called sharenting. Sharenting is, you know, we are talking about taking parents' permission, you know, verified thing. Now, what happens when parents themselves have no clue about the risks? I mean, I am aghast that my friends, I'm not going to go into names, the amount of information they share about their children, you know, on social media, with no privacy, even with privacy, you know, it's just like, you know, my child does this is the face, this is what is so cute, you know, this is a birthday, you know, goes to this school, attends cricket classes, everything. So there are some countries which are now thinking of empowering the child after a certain age to say it's not so like these companies, it's not only you have to take permission from the parent, even the child, you know, before up. And I think this is a very good idea because parents, I mean, I'm talking about children above a certain age, they have actually no power to decide, you know, how much of their life is shared already on social media, and they become talking points or trophy children for parents. Parents have to realize that. How will they decide, you know, what is good, what is bad, when they themselves are, you know? So that's something which we also have to discuss. And again, we have to equip parents, you know, knowledge, insights in safe spaces.
Thank you so much for adding that. आई थिंक वो बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी समझना है. एंड मैं इसी बात को आगे ले जाना चाहती हूँ बिकॉज अगर हम AI और बच्चों की बात कर रहे हैं तो सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट है हम जाने उनके बीच में सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट किरदार जो है वो है पेरेंट्स. कि एक बच्चा अपने घर में पेरेंट्स के साथ रहता है, उसका AI के साथ कैसा रिश्ता है, उसके लिए सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट स्टेक होल्डर है पेरेंट. सबसे पहला स्टॉप जो हम कह सकते हैं, पहला मेजर जो है. चैट जीपीटी एक लैंग्वेज देता है और एक एक्सेस देता है. मतलब जो भाषा है चैट जीपीटी की वो ऐसी है कि आप अपने शायद बेस्ट फ्रेंड से बात कर रहे हैं. एंड आई डोंट थिंक बेस्ट फ्रेंड्स के साथ भी आप इतने अच्छे से बात कर पाते हैं जितना आपको चैट जीपीटी देता है. और दूसरा एक्सेस. तो नाउ मोर देन एवर हमेशा से ज़्यादा अब ज़रूरत है कि पेरेंट्स और चाइल्ड का रिलेशनशिप जो है वो इम्प्रूव्ड हो. AI वाली चीज़ को रोकने के लिए, एक तरीके से रोकना भी नहीं कहूँगी क्योंकि वो गलत तरीके से हो सकता है, बट हम पहले बोलते थे पेरेंट्स को कि आप ध्यान दो अपने बच्चे का, बट अब ज़्यादा ध्यान दो क्योंकि आप रिप्लेसेबल हो और आप बहुत ज़्यादा लेवल पे रिप्लेसेबल हो. तो आप कैसी लैंग्वेज अडाप्ट कर सकते हैं अपने बच्चे से बात करने के लिए, आप कैसा एक्सेस दे सकते हैं. 9 बजे रात को आपका बच्चा आपके पास आ रहा है, आप थके हुए हैं ऑफिस के काम से, तो आप बोलोगे बेटा अभी नहीं, अभी मैं बात नहीं कर पाऊँगी, और वो जाएगा रूम में, फ़ोन उठाएगा, चैट जीपीटी पे वो डालेगा, ठीक है, और वो ये भी बोलेगा कि मेरे पेरेंट्स मुझे सुनते नहीं हैं. तो अब हमें इस चीज़ को और अच्छे से समझना पड़ेगा कि हम अपने बच्चे को कैसे ध्यान दें. तो उस चीज़ के लिए आई थिंक पत्रलेखा को मैं फिर से इंसिस्ट करूँगी कि एक लैंग्वेज और एक्सेस और एक सोशल फैक्टर जो इसमें आता है, और ये सिर्फ पेरेंट्स की भी बात नहीं है, एज फ्रेंड्स भी. अगर आपके पड़ोस में भी कोई बच्चा है जो यू नो इन सब चीज़ों से शायद आपको ज़्यादा मानता हो, मेरे मतलब आप सब जानते होंगे पड़ोस में कोई यू नो बच्चा है जो आपसे बात करता हो, तो आपको अलर्ट रहना, समझना कि वो बच्चा क्या कहना चाहता है ना. हमारे टाइम पे तो काउंसलर्स होते थे स्कूल में जो अपने रूम का दरवाज़ा हमेशा खुला रखते थे, और वो फिर आपके पेरेंट्स को भी लूप इन करते थे कि क्या कहते हैं आपके बच्चे ने हमें ये बताया और आपके बच्चे को ये प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. चैट जीपीटी आपको आके नहीं बताएगा. तो आज की डेट में पेरेंट्स के साथ एक लैंग्वेज और एक एक्सेस, इन चीज़ों पे मैं पत्रलेखा की हेल्प लेना चाहूँगी. एंड थोड़ा सा हिंदी में बिकॉज थोड़े लोग हिंदी भी हैं. You want to add, Dr. Alim? Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to speak in Hindi a little bit. So अभी मैं जम्मू कश्मीर I went to, मैं गया था, and 10 मदर्स से हम मिले वहाँ पे, एंड वहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन था अबाउट what they want for their deaf child. So the first question that came up, I asked them that what is the challenge that you're facing with your deaf children at home? And they told me that the deaf child is very troublesome. बहुत तंग करते हैं, समझते नहीं हैं, गुस्सा आता है इनको, इनका टेम्पर बहुत हाई है, दे आर वेरी एंग्री किड्स, समझ नहीं आता इनके साथ क्या करें. तो क्या करते हैं पेरेंट्स, फ़ोन दे देते हैं. They just give the phone to the child because the teachers and parents, nobody knows sign language, nobody knows how to communicate with the child. So they try, fail. So they just give the phone to play, or how parents are even monitoring what the kid is watching, they don't know. You don't know what they're doing at the phone. So that's also a very big danger that we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so, I'll circle back to what I started off. It's the safe space. See, all relationships in a very turbulent world, relationships are also going through, turbulence and transition, and that includes the parent-child. There's a whole intergenerational talk. Now, most of the kids that I've spoken to, I used to also teach part-time in Jindal. These were relatively rich kids, but even so, I remember I used to teach actually health, and for health, science, and environment. And on my last day, I said, okay, forget about what I am teaching. What do you want to hear about? And they said, ma'am, mental health. And every one of them, now these kids, on the face of it, have no issues. वो जो survival वाली बात नहीं है कि रोजी रोटी का कोई problem नहीं है. लेकिन वो कहते हैं कि बहुत सारे बच्चे, including the very bright kids, कि वो हमारे parents के साथ कुछ भी बातचीत नहीं है, मतलब really meaningful. तो हमारे इंडियन फैमिलीज़ में एक देयर इज़ अ फॉर्म कि ठीक है हम डिनर पे बैठते हैं, हम बातें करते हैं, बट आप बातें तो करते हैं लेकिन किस चीज़ के बात कर रहे हैं. तो वो बच्चे कहते हैं कि हमारा पेरेंट्स जो है वो उनका एक दो सवाल ये है, मार्क्स कितना मिला, ये है फेलोशिप मिला, विदेश जा रहे हो कि नहीं. उनके बच्चे वो शर्मा जी का लड़का, शर्मा जी का लड़का से ये किया वो किया, ये देखो ये तुमने क्या हो. So, ये जो बच्चे हैं, they say that it's a very transactional relationship. वो parents, now looking at it from the parents, they say देखो हम इतने पैसा खर्च किया तुम्हारे ऊपर, वो return of investment वाली theory है. लेकिन वो बच्चों के अभी जो आजकल के जो बच्चे हैं, and this is not starting from 8-9, कि वो ये क्लास करो वो क्लास करो, मार्क्स कितना मिला, क्यों नहीं मिला, that kind of thing. So they get terrified. They don't, अगर मान लो कि कुछ 0 मिला मैथ्स में, हो सकते हैं मुझे मिला एक ज़माने में, I still have nightmares. So अगर वो पेरेंट्स ने बोला हमें 2 ट्यूटर लगाया लेकिन आपको अंडा मिला, तो वो इतनी डरे हुए होते हैं कि I'm just giving an example. It could be something, like in this 16-year-old lad, you're bullied, you're humiliated repeatedly. They can't talk to parents. कि वो they think वो शुरू से में आपके ही कुछ गलती होगी. आप क्यों ऐसे किया? नहीं अब आप adjust कर लो. हमारा वो भी है ना, adjust कर लो. थोड़ा हमारा adjust कर लो. There are some very, very top private schools where even the smallest, ungli उठाओ, the whole brigade of parents will come and they'll ask क्यों ऐसे हुआ. But the vast majority जो parents है मध्यम वर्ग के हो और उसके नीचे, they don't have the time. And also there is the thing, अगर मान लो कि मेरी maid की बच्चा, do you think that maid has the agency to walk into a principal's room and say वो बच्चे को निकाल छोड़ो? So there is that fear. ये जो बच्चा जो suicide किया था उसके पेरेंट्स में भी this is the thing, वो ट्रांसफ़र सर्टिफिकेट वाली बात ना, इस क्लास 10 में क्या होगा, वो बच्चे दूसरे बच्चे को बोल रहे कि मैं suicide, nobody took it seriously. So I think it's the creation of safe space, because I personally feel कि एकदम policing thing will not work. A parent cannot stand behind the child 24 hours. And वो फ़ोन से सिर्फ घर में नहीं कर रहे हैं, उसके friends भी हैं, उनके brother sister है, और कोई जगह में जाते हैं. So you have to create that sense of, I really think that more than intelligence, more than talent, what is really going to matter is resilience skills. तो आपका कुछ भी हुआ है. When my daughter was small, I used to say this to her, कि कुछ भी हो, the worst thing you can think of, you are not the first one. You think of the worst thing that can happen to any child, but you are still not the first one. दूसरों के साथ भी हुए हैं, कोई ना कोई हुआ है, तो you can talk about it. Yes, it will be problem. So at least if you create that sense of space, and all parents will require a lot of training for this, because हमारे जो रिश्ते भी होते हैं, husband wife, उनके बीच में भी उतने actual intimate conversations होते हैं क्या? नहीं. तो पेरेंट्स के ये कर, इट्स वेरी सुपरफिशियल. जो बच्चा आउटवर्डली हाँ वो तो घर में है, वो प्रणाम कर रहे हैं, पूजा जा रहे हैं, बट उनके we don't have those interior dialogues. Parents also don't ask कि they don't ask कितने marks मिला, लेकिन they don't ask आपके अभी आप क्या सोच रहे हो. They don't ask this thing. So whatever law, whatever technology, unless you can create that safe space, and I think NGOs, community workers also, उनका भी एक बहुत ही role, important role है कि वो train करे, equip करे, कि all parents are not at that evolved stage. Then you can, the social component, that is absolutely necessary. Otherwise behavior will not change. The child has to understand, भाई एक ही जिंदगी है. I don't believe in reincarnation. तो आपका एक ही, you've just got this one life. You take responsibility for yourself. अगर आपके सारा time आप AI में, if you're going to do this, even if you get marks, आपके ये नहीं होगा. AI की अगर आप medical advice AI से ले रहे हो, you can go seriously. तो ये जो एक, like a friend, I'm not saying it is no holds barred, but at least remove that fear and be non-judgmental. Agar some child comes and says, today, I beat up another child, and then, that child beat me up, and then I beat up, and unke do daant gaye hai. You don't start off with, ki, you have done this, because then they'll just switch off. And remember, now they have options. वो पहले ज़माने में वो कोई, they will go to another friend and things like that, So it's that sense of, in each one there's no formula. So I would say it's that. You come back to creating safe spaces.
Just one thing I'd like to add here.
Yeah.
Just how you mentioned, parents and teachers, and I think the teachers also play an important role in a child's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're meeting the teacher every day, and the teachers need to be more sensitive and understandable on how to create a safe space for children, to have dialogue with children, to have, all these safe spaces in schools as well.
थोड़ा सा we need to ensure कि कुछ लोग सो ना जाए. तो मैं क्राउड में पूछना चाहती हूँ कि कोई भी ऐसा व्यक्ति है अभी जो कुछ सवाल पूछना चाहता है, या कोई पेरेंट जो समझना चाहता है कि आई डोंट हैव दैट इमोशनल कैपेसिटी, बट फिर भी मैं अपने बच्चे को हेल्प करना चाहता हूँ. कोई फ्रेंड, कोई भी टीचर, कोई भी कुछ पूछना चाहता है. आई सी वन हैंड गोइंग अप. कैन वी प्लीज जस्ट फॉर अ वेरी ब्रीफ मोमेंट टेक वन क्वेश्चन? एंड आंसर सब कर सकते हैं, बाय द वे. हम तीनों के अलावा भी बहुत लोग यहाँ पे आंसर करने के लिए हैं. Yeah, you are.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vasudhara Nair. I'm assistant professor. I teach at OPGW Global University.
Okay.
I heard you and I was hearing both of you. I essentially teach papers on mental health, trauma, resilience. Now I deal with a cohort of students who are, thank you, hoping to become mental health professionals, right? And one of the things that I was hearing, that as a teacher, it's great to have your entire university giving them everything. But still, students come back and they resort, especially in residential university setting, where parents are not there. Teachers, their roommates are the primary caregivers, right? And it's not a conversation that we talk about, but there's a lot of work that gets, and which is why they often very openly speak about how they resort to AI. They are not very nonchalantly. They talk about कि हाँ use किया, बात की, assignments बनाए, submit किया. उनको पता भी है कि marks कम होने वाले हैं, तभी they were like दिमाग नहीं चला. And that's it. And we have to take it nowadays, and that's the world that we are seeing. We get assignments, and which sort of obviously pushes saying that your regular traditional system is not working. At the same time, their parents, unlike the traditional parenting structure, I think COVID helped parent to somewhere reflect. उन्होंने gentle parenting try की, traditional छोड़ा, they had their own transgenerational trauma, they left all of that, and then they realized even gentle parenting didn't work. And now they're resorting to trauma-informed parenting, positive parenting and everything. I don't think, even as a parent, I understand that striking a balance is a tricky thing. But my question is, now when these students who come, RCI, nor RCI, whichever accreditation that you want to use, when they say that हमें mental health practitioner बनने के लिए internship चाहिए, But when we actually go to child spaces, community spaces, either they are charging them really high-end money, or they are refused sometimes internship, but they don't know what to do. So they have now resorted saying that, "Acha marks अच्छे लेने के लिए can I use prompts on ChatGPT or any other?" ChatGPT is just an example, but they use prompts on them to see that are they becoming better clinicians, right? And then they come back and very honestly tell their professors. And as a mental health professor teaching them, it's not an easy, conversation to really have, because they say that, listen, you had a different world where you were allowed. We don't even want money. We are just going for the experience. Still, we're not getting. People are asking us apply 6 months, 8 months, 1 year ahead. What do we do? How do we work? So now they're resorting saying that it's fine, I will check my prompts on ChatGPT, hoping that when I turn up that day and when I get an opportunity to actually observe a client, probably I'm able to use the right question. So when these experiences come back, I do not always have the best answer or the affirmative answer to tell them that, yeah, you are learning it the right way. So I think this is a very important and a very tricky situation, but a real-time situation that academicians, researchers, teachers, you put it however you want, but all of us are dealing. So if you could actually enlighten, I've tried even now trying to do in research just to understand that what's actually happening. If this is the trajectory, then what is that I'm supposed to change, right?
Understood.
So, yeah,
Yes,
thank
yes.
you.
Right. Dr. Alim, do you want to take this?
I think it's too complex, and yeah, I think
I mean, it's a fact that, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a journalist, columnist, actually. And I've read that, I was quite shocked to hear that a huge percentage of the content in the media right now is AI generated. And actually, if you use AI, you also know this AI style, It's unka there's a specific rhythm. It is not this, but it is this. Unka ek structure hota hai, because what is AI? It is large data sets which they put together. So it's actually, ekdam lay person may not be able to detect, but if you use AI style बहुत आसानी से detect हो जाता है. So when you go into academia, plagiarism, मतलब you will get auto ejected, and especially if you've not mentioned. And if you have mentioned, you have to, like research organizations and all, they actually have to mention. It's like, conflict of interest. You have to say, I have used AI in this specific way. So you can say grammar check or something like that. That's allowed. Or, spelling check. वो सब ठीक है. लेकिन पूरा शुरू से, beginning to end, if it's an AI, like if I say AI, write me a column on AI safeguards for children. Huh? Actually, it will give me. But अगर मैं उसको न पढ़ के सीधा, I use that, there's a lot of dangers. I think one of the things I also think that from a purely self-interest point of view, you're basically digging your own grave if the 100% of the thinking is being done by AI. Because let's say you are an organization, अगर आपको internship मिल भी गए, and then you even get a job. If you, it's very easy to make out actually, if you're a little bit experienced, कि why should I hire you? Why should I pay you a salary? Why should I give you anything if that work can be done by AI? So if you're, like in our writing, creative kind of a thing, if you've done no field work, you've not spoken to anybody, and wo yahan se, wahan se, you've just taken, what is the incentive for any employer to pay me or even anybody to give me an assignment? And yesterday I saw this, people and social influencers ऐसे कर रहे हैं. मैंने एक column लिखा on the falling rupee. Twitter में मैं देख रही हूँ कि social influencers with far more, followers than me, like 4 lakh followers है, they're taking look at how brazen, वो exactly वो column उठा के, वो just the quotes they knocked off, and वही करके, they're doing it. But you can get caught out, and then there's a danger. So I think people have to realize that, you're not the only smart person. So whoever is hiring you, whoever is dealing with you, is also boning up on what AI can do. तो अगर बार बार आप ऐसे assignments submit कर रहे हो या नौकरी में, which looks like top to bottom, completely 100% AI generated, I
Okay.
think you're digging your own grave.
Okay, I'll just take a status check from from the Protsahan team. How much time do I have, and what can I do for you?
So I think there's another question.
Just Sonal, 1 second.
So we'll take, is it working? Okay. We'll take 3 or 4 quick reflections,
Yeah.
stakeholder reflections, and of course the panel to then close in the next 6 minutes or so. So 3 minutes of questions and 3 to 4 minutes of closing.
Done. Next question, please. Okay, I think ma'am in red and blue here.
My question? Or someone else? Thank you. I am Rashi Mitra. I'm actually a child rights practitioner. So thank you so much for this esteemed, insightful panel. I curate a child rights newsletter called Child Rights Global, wherein one of the editions itself was, the title was "Not All Is Hunky Dory with AI." So thank you for the insights and very hunky. Not all is hunky dory with AI. So, so very rightly, Patrilea and Arpan has highlighted that currently the newspapers are focusing on AI, but they are currently focusing on, in terms of AI and business, how AI is changing the landscape of profitability, of economy, and everything. And also, Dr. Alim has very rightly highlighted that AI is a child protection issue. So I wanted to understand from the journalism perspective that how we can use journalism as a tool to create awareness about how AI is a child protection issue and how we can stir those conversations before it becomes a catastrophe. So that's my question, and thank you once again for your insights. Yeah.
I'll do like 3 second का job यहाँ पे. Talk. Report it. जितना आप लिख सकते हो इसके बारे में उतना लिखो, जितना इसके बारे में पढ़ सकते हो उतना पढ़ो. Try to get ahead. जितना इससे आप लोगों से बात करोगे, जितना आप इसके बारे में न्यूज़ आर्टिकल्स छापोगे, उतना ही ये डोमिनेंट टॉपिक बनेगा. आप न्यूज़लेटर लिखते हो, आई थिंक दे आर द बेस्ट सर्विस. आप अपना न्यूज़लेटर का लिंक आप यहाँ पे सबको बांट दो एंड आप सिर्फ AI पे ही फोकस करो. हाउ लाइक क्राइम्स, therapy, all sorts of things AI can do.
Can I ask my question, please? Oh.
You can use
Oh, you can use this.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
All right. So just adding to what you were just mentioning, and you also mentioned about talk. And it's situation-based. For example, in schools, if teachers, parents, if they are more aware about how to use AI in school also, they need to have more discussions even among teachers, even with the principal, even with the students, to talk about the dangers of AI, to talk about all these things. Have more and more conversation even in schools. And if you can share more light on that, and that will, I think, really broadcast that. I don't see more of it coming related to the AI for persons with disability or deaf. I don't see a lot happening, even in the news, in the media, the dangers for the disabled community happening yet.
Okay. Thank you. I think one question is here.
I've been waiting for a while, please.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes, please.
My name is Tina. I work with deaf children, and a lot of what has been spoken today resonates. I also meet the parents. So what you spoke about, that parental consent actually is not very helpful here because they're not aware. They don't have the time. They are too worried about the child's future. They're just focused on the studies, understandably so, because they're worried about the future. So children do turn to us, the teachers, their peers, and also internet. My question is this, that when they are putting the query in ChatGPT or internet or AI or any of this, the output, my concern is that the output is not very helpful.
Is there anyone who's regulating the input? Because the output is as good as the input. So is there anyone, any regulatory body who's regulating this? That we know that children will use the AI. There's no way around it. There's absolutely no other option. We know they will use it. I use it. Everybody uses it. So what we really need is a regulatory body who's saying that the group of mental health professionals, therapists, teachers, people working in disability field, they all get together and make sure that the answers or the input is all regulated, so that when children go and put in the query in ChatGPT, they get the right response. So what is being done about it? Is there anybody who's regulating all of this?
So that's what I spoke about. Actually, we do actually have a law now. It just was the rules, the DPDP, the Digital Personal, this thing Act. It was only brought into effect last month, so it's too early to actually know what is going on. So yeah, but I think, you see, it is like you cannot now what is the right answer? That's a very tricky terrain, because what is the right answer for the parent is not what is the right answer for the child. You're going to, that is where it is. It's all very subjective. But I think there's also a lack of awareness about what exactly can the AI do. And one thing you must understand when you're in a country like India, that we don't really generate our AI, the actual programs, the LLM, the large language models. Most of the information in what you see in AI is actually coming from the global north. And you can test this out. The vast amount, because they basically go by English. They are not putting in Hindi material. You can use in the language, you can opt to be in Hindi, but the core material is from the global north. And you can see that, when you sometimes they say things like coffins and all that, like sometimes I've given a prompt. So you can see that they're culturally not aware. So children have to understand that a lot of the times the answer it gives you is maybe absolutely right for a child growing up in the United States, but not for somebody, let's say a poor child in this thing. The child has to understand that if the parents said, ki, aise mat karo, I don't think it will work. And you cannot police, just like internet cannot be policed. So the law, for instance, and all the safeguards there are there, that what you can do, the privacy settings, like for a 6-year-old. Firstly, I don't understand why 6-year-olds should be using so much of AI. But assuming that they are, because the phone is lying around, you have to, the parents also have to understand what is the information and have an honest conversation. But 100% regulation is not going to be possible, because then you're going to run into they will say innovation nahi ho sakte. So that is the tension right now. The people, and that is the tension between the US idea of AI and the European idea of AI. There is a whole conflict between what is the role of regulation. The people who are very much into innovation and saying, if you go too much on regulation, you will dampen innovation. So within the global AI sphere also, there is a debate going on. So, we have to find our own answers, but understand that a lot of the answers which you get right now is not even from your reality. You must be aware of that.
Yeah, I think I'll take my final question here before we move on to the policy part of it. I'm sorry, he's been raising his hand from the very start. That's
Sorry,
okay.
guys, if I've taken your slot, I'll keep quiet after that. So this is regarding the privacy when it comes to AI. One thing that we keep missing, or which we don't hear often, sorry, I'm over from Manipur, often is that there's a misconception, or people are saying that if we have to use internet, which we can't in today's world, that you have to essentially lose a huge amount of privacy and you'll have to share a lot of things about yourself. But what about the alternatives where we don't have to give the information? We don't have to trust Google, we don't have to trust Meta or anybody, or OpenAI to safeguard our details or need to track us. There are so many alternatives of open source models. Yeah. We don't have to use Google to recommend us whatever the hell they want to show us. I mean, there are so many other options. And this kind of adoptions of privacy-focused alternatives or open source alternatives are not seen on mainstream media or things like that. I'm raising this because there's a lot of people from the media on the panel. If we raised it, then we are called paranoid folks. I mean, we don't have to use WhatsApp. We can use Signal. I use PhonePe. And in the PhonePe, there is a Google tracker which is tracking me about 40 parameters, and there has been 474 attempts. Okay, so we don't see this on media. Can you please help and educate us inclusive, okay, and everybody else?
आपको ऐड करना है? ओके सर ऐड करना चाहेंगे.
Thank you. This is Kailash from Telangana State. I worked as a child welfare committee member also. This is very good topic. It is a very challenging task with the children. AI, the most of children is using AI for games and their personal purposes and their whatever assignments, whatever requirements, they are not sharing to others. Those are sharing with the AI. So all the discussions where we had. So we need to bring to the this task into the rural level, teachers and parents, whatever community level. So how much we use this AI? It is required or not required? How much level we need to use for children? Children level, we can segregate at children level AI apps. So that kind of regulatory is required in the top level. So and also this focusing is very much highly they are doing by the social media and other whatever we are doing in our society. So AI is doing this much, AI is doing this much, we can do likewise. Such things are daily they are coming, rolling. So that's why children are children are attracting for the AI, doing something. They don't have the knowledge, so it is misusing and what it's going likewise. So we need to publicize, propagate, and very larger level awareness is required in various levels. It is schools levels, parents levels, and community level. It is much needful. This is thank you.
I'm really sorry. हम लंच पे बात करेंगे. Don't worry. हम कहीं नहीं जा रहे. सब यहीं के ही हैं. But हमें टाइम को थोड़ा सा बाइट करते हुए. Dr. Alim, can you take this for like 30 seconds? Or should I?
Yeah, I think I can. Just like you just mentioned, I went to a school recently in a remote area, and in Manipur and Jammu Kashmir and then also in Punjab, they are not using AI, they are not using technology as much. And I was actually telling them to use it. So how about you? You start using technology, catch up with the world. Why are you behind? The world is progressing. So I know that it's a conflict. The dangers of it are there, but at the same time, do we let them have the traditional means? So it's important for me to understand that this topic is very open and it opens opportunity for research in terms of how we protect our children, how we protect children in schools, especially for me, deaf children, and also teachers, need to be more aware about the dangers of AI and also the positives of using it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, and having me discuss this.
All right. मैं बहुत जल्दी से I want to wrap up in like 5 minutes. So I want to bring up some recommendations that have been made outside India. ठीक है, एक तो हम ऑस्ट्रेलिया का सोशल मीडिया बैन जानते ही हैं. डेनमार्क इज़ ऑल्सो टेकिंग नोट्स, और हम ये भी जानते हैं कि नॉर्डिक नेशंस में, और सब कहते हैं हम बाहर को क्यों देखें, हम इंडिया है, इंडिया के अपने चैलेंजेस हैं. आई टोटली अंडरस्टैंड, बट देर इज़ नो हार्म कि हम देखें कि मॉडल एग्जाम्पल होता कैसा है, कि बाहर के लोग करना क्या चाहते हैं. क्योंकि अगर ऑस्ट्रेलिया ने 16 के नीचे के बच्चों के लिए सोशल मीडिया बैन कर दिया है, काफ़ी पेरेंट्स और काफ़ी स्टूडेंट्स भी रिलीव्ड है, बिकॉज उनके लिए फिर वो बॉडी शेमिंग, टीनेजर बुलिंग, ये सारे इश्यूज जो सोशल मीडिया पे बहुत ईजिली, काफ़ी लोगों को लगता था कि मेरी फ़ोटो पे लाइक्स नहीं आया, बच्चों को लगता है ना कि ओ ये तो बहुत ही आगे जा रहा है, इसकी अचीवमेंट्स हाईलाइट हो रही है, इसको 100 लाइक मिल रहे हैं. वो सारे इश्यूज थोड़े से कम हो जाएंगे. ठीक है, हाँ, हम अभी भी ट्रॉमा इन्फॉर्म्ड इकोसिस्टम पे नहीं आए हैं, तो आई थिंक हमारे पास पूरा दिन है. आई होप हम किसी तरीके से उसको कवर कर ले. बट इवन सेक्शुअल असॉल्ट, रेप, बुलिंग, some sort of harassment, stalking, all of these issues, क्या AI इन चीज़ों को अच्छे से हैंडल कर पा रहा है? इस चीज़ के लिए यूरोपियन पार्लियामेंट में मेंबर ऑफ यूरोपियन पार्लियामेंट्स ने कुछ सजेशंस दिए थे, जो मैं कल रात को पढ़ भी रही थी, और मुझे एक्चुअली लगा कि ये तो इंडिया में भी हो सकता है. वाई हैवेंट वी रीच्ड आउट टू आवर लॉ मेकर, शशि थरूर, प्रियंका चतुर्वेदी, राहुल गांधी, बिकॉज वो लोग खूब अच्छे से समझते हैं. तो आई वॉज वंडरिंग कि मैं उनको रीड आउट करूँगी एंड मे बी यू गाइज कैन लेट मी नो कि हाँ ये हो सकता है या ये नहीं हो सकता है, सो दैट एक बार हमें रूम का अंदाज़ा मिले, राइट? So, MEPs, members of European Parliament, have suggested personal liability for senior management in cases of serious and persistent breaches of minor protection provisions, with particular respect to age verification. तो हम suppose Facebook ने या Twitter पे या Telegram पे Snapchat पे कुछ minors के rights violate हुए हैं, तो क्या पेरेंट्स उन कंपनी के सीनियर मैनेजमेंट को कोर्ट्स पे ले जा सकते हैं ताकि सीनियर मैनेजमेंट को लगे कि हाँ, we can be taken to court for this? Is that possible in India?
I think the DPDP actually has provisions for some of the huge penalties.
Yeah.
Once it is pans out totally.
And मैं इस चीज़ को ज़्यादा मतलब कोर्ट और लॉ उससे भी नहीं चाहती हूँ कि हम उसको लीगली इतना, मतलब वो तो है ही हमारे पास, बट एज पेरेंट्स, एज मेंबर्स ऑफ दिस सोसाइटी, क्या हम उस चीज़ को समझ सकते हैं कि ये हो सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता है? मेरे पड़ोस में किसी के साथ हुआ या मेरी फ्रेंड के बेटे के साथ कभी कुछ ऐसा हो, उसके राइट्स वायलेट हुए, तो कैन वी टेक मेक श्योर कि सीनियर मैनेजमेंट ऑफ फेसबुक को एक पर्सनल लाइबिलिटी हम इंस्ट्रक्ट करें, राइट? नेक्स्ट, बैन एंगेजमेंट बेस्ड रेकमेंडर एल्गोरिदम, जो एल्गोरिदम रिकमेंडेशन करती है एंगेजमेंट फार्मिंग पे कि ये टॉपिक बच्चों में ज़्यादा है, राइट? माइनर्स, एंड डिसेबल द मोस्ट अडिक्टिव डिज़ाइन फीचर्स बाय डिफ़ॉल्ट. आप बच्चे को फ़ोन पकड़ा रहे हो, ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं, बट जो सबसे ज़्यादा अडिक्टिव डिज़ाइन है, रील स्क्रॉल करे जा रहे हैं, राइट? क्या इस एंगेजमेंट के टूल के या फीचर को आप ऐप में खुद बैन कर सकते हैं? इज़ दैट पॉसिबल एज अ पेरेंट?
It's part of the law.
It is part of the law, but I think लोग यहाँ पे इंडिया में the biggest problem है, हमारे पास laws और policy बहुत है, but as parents, as stakeholders of this society, क्या हम aware हैं? For that, I think we should be aware. मतलब हम अगर किसी के साथ कभी कुछ हो तो हमें ये सारी चीज़ें पता होनी चाहिए, right? Ensure that recommender systems do not present content to minors based on profiling. कि किसी minor को profile कर दिया है, अब उसमें बोलेंगे प्लीज़ फॉलो दिस अकाउंट, वो आता है ना इंस्टाग्राम में नीचे, प्लीज़ फॉलो, प्लीज़ फेसबुक में आप इनको जानते हैं तो आप इनको फॉलो कर लीजिए. कैन वी मेक श्योर कि एप्स इन सब चीज़ों को भी डिसेबल कर दे, राइट? Prohibit platforms from monetization or providing financial or material incentives for kidfluencing. Kidfluencing is जब minors influencers बन जाते हैं ना, like dancing and like so many things are there, right? Parents कहते हैं मेरा बच्चा है, जो करना चाहेगा करेगा, right? तो क्या platforms इन सब चीज़ों के जो पैसे देते हैं उसके लिए हम platforms को तो बोल सकते हैं ना कि आप इन चीज़ के पैसे मत दो, आप उसको incentivize कैसे कर सकते हो, right? And the final thing is address the ethical and legal challenges arising from AI-powered nudity apps. जो भी इनके legal challenges होंगे उनको address करना, you know, in courts. So I think these are few suggestions that I really found interesting, and मुझे लगा कि बाहर हो सकता है तो हमारे यहाँ भी हो सकता है इंडिया में, क्योंकि apps और digital world हम बहुत तेज़ी से जा रहे हैं. And अब मुझे time up दिखा चुका है सब. I think that's all. I think Dr. Alim definitely has notes, no? No? Okay, cool. Then we will wrap up here. Thank you so much for, being here.
Just one last sentence, ki, a lot of these things are now, just as of last month, in our new law. So there are all these, verification, exploit, all of this is there. All these suggestions are there. Now, the thing is, what is not clear is if you have a problem with that, what is the grievance redressal mechanism and what is the awareness? And the other key issue is that already we have a digital divide. So there are बच्चे जिनके पास phone भी नहीं है, and then you have schools which is saying you have to do this thing with ये. How are you going to put these things together? This AI is coming on, overlaying on an existing digital divide. तो ये हमें इसके ऊपर बात करना पड़ेगा. We have to, make people aware.
I think that's all. Thank you so much. You've been a kind audience.